Hello everyone. I'm here to talk to you about perhaps the worst evil on the planet, the most horrific thing that humanity has ever experienced. It's in a sense worse than war. It's worse than genocide. And it's happening every single day. And I'm in a sense I'm being humorous here, but in a different sense I'm not. I really think it's a horrible thing. And it has been talked about, in fact it's been covered up all throughout the last 50 years, even beyond that. It's called hypergamy, and it's a woman's tendency to be attracted to dominant men, to men with social status, with prestige, with power, with strength, with influence, really all the political garbage that has caused civilizations to crumble and that has caused division and suffering among people. Um, and I'm going to explain why exactly it's so evil. I bring this up. I have been planning on making a video with a very tight and well-defined script for some time, but I just couldn't get myself to do it, partly because of the pain I experienced due to the inevitability of hypergamy and what this means for me, what this means for other men, what this means for people in general. Exploring it in detail, I found that it really is, as I said, one of the most horrific things in the world. Um, it all ultimately comes down to two things. One of them, the attitude that a man has to be socially dominant, influential, powerful. And the other one has to do with the fact that he has to be more so in these aspects of his life than the woman he is in love with. And each of these affects I guess gender relations in its own unique way. It could very well be that hypergamy is, how should I say this, relative, in the sense that it's only relative to a woman's position. If she is, say, low status, she would be attracted to a man of average status or high status, but not a man of low status like herself. And if she's of high status, then obviously very few men will be good enough for her. But it could also be that hypergamy, and this is what I believe from the brief literature I've read, there's not much of it admittedly, that hypergamy is in a sense absolute, and it depends not so much on the woman's social status as the man's ability to exude social status. And I say this because it's interesting. There was research carried out on men who are socially dominant, and apparently the smell that they exude is actually something that women are attracted to. Likewise, there's been research done on how women have a tendency to berate their spouses more if they are not dominant, or their spouses or their boyfriends, if they are not dominant during the height of their estrous cycle. It's interesting how hypergamy itself tends to manifest, particularly when the woman is ovulating, that is to say, when she is the most fertile. And that, in a sense, suggests that it's a throwback to, well, both very barbaric times when our primate ancestors were fighting for dominance like mad, and a throwback to more recent, still barbaric times when the chimps we were descended from, they lived in packs. So in these packs, women, female chimps, would have a tendency to sleep around with with lots of male chimps, but they would preferentially select for male chimps who were dominant during the time when they were fertile. So in other words, it's what women do today, how should I say this, in terms of treating nice guys as lower status and shunning them, but shunning them in terms of reproduction as opposed to shunning them in terms of sexuality. It would make sense because of the fact that we come from a barbaric, I guess, culture of chimpanzees where promiscuity was the norm, that women would be more attracted towards dominant men specifically during the ovulatory period. And if that Considering all the evidence, if it is the case that women are more attracted to dominant men during their fertile periods, and if this dominance isn't something that's relative to the woman so much as relative to the man himself, then that presents some really horrid implications for our society and for how women handle our society in a sense, and for how they influence it. Now, I'm going to go on a tangent and mention that both of these views can be resolved. They can be brought together. Naturally, if a woman sees that that a man is not more dominant than she is, more high status than she is, more influential than she is, then she might simply think, okay, if he's not tougher than me, how do I know he's going to be able to protect me from those other guys? How do I know that he's going to be able to well, provide for me, stand up for me, and just generally infantilize me? How do I know that he's not stronger than everyone else, pretty much? And this is actually an argument that I've seen written on a forum by women for women. I'm giving an almost exact quote when saying, if he cannot handle me, how do I know that he would protect me from those other guys? And this is, some people have argued, some people who are PUAs, I wouldn't trust them because, well, they're hypocrites in general. They lie and they manipulate in order to get into some women's beds, so why would they lie and manipulate in order to increase their social status among men? PUAs have argued that that the shit tests that women carry out are in a sense fitness tests. Fitness tests in that they want to see whether or not you are dominant enough. So to discuss the implications of hypergamy in our society, well, you know, if you as a woman are attracted to men who are dominant, who have social influence, who have social status, that means that all these other guys who don't want it, you're gonna toss away. You're gonna have this friend bin and this boyfriend bin. Again, this is something that a woman has told me in person, that she has a boyfriend bin and a friend bin, and this is how she classifies men. That essentially you're gonna go for a man who wants to take charge, who wants to have authority, but the problem is that authority is limited. It's a limited resource. You know, dominance is ultimately a zero-sum game. If you want more prestige, you're going to have to take it from others, simply because there's only so much prestige to go around. How many celebrities really do you know? Surely not everyone can be a celebrity. How many people who control other people do you know? Surely not everyone can control other people. And in a sense, it's made far worse by feminism. Because whereas in the past a man would have authority over a woman, this was guaranteed by marriage. What this meant was essentially that a woman would always be able to look up that man as an authority figure, as someone who held authority over others, and caught his testosterone pumping because of that, and started smelling like a dominant man and acting like a dominant man, etc. But nowadays, since women are supposedly our equals, and they expect us to treat them as our equals or as our superiors, however they like, we are asked by them, in a sense, collectively, to create dominance hierarchies between ourselves, so that some of us are going to be attracted to them while the other ones lose out and are not going to be attracted to them, and as a consequence are going to be spat on and kicked away and be rejected in general. Which is wrong. It's morally wrong. It's evil. And this is what I want to point out first of all. If a woman can only be attracted to men who are at the top or somewhere near the top of dominance hierarchies, well, either they can decide for all women to constitute the bottom of dominance hierarchies so that all men are at the top of dominance hierarchies, or they can say that some men they're just gonna completely screw them out of any sort of married life, any sort of love and affection, because they're not dominant enough. And guess what? In order to be dominant enough, you have to kick around other men, and that just creates it's a big Ponzi scheme. It's pretty much what it is. Female sexuality becomes, or actually is, a big Ponzi scheme. And it's a Ponzi scheme perpetrated by a lot of self-serving, hypocritical scumbags who are actually weaker and more vulnerable and less dominant than those that they ask to dominate each other. It's completely absurd. But for some reason, a lot of people, even a lot of men, still go for this sort of thing. And the biggest problem with this is that it creates a hierarchy that's not a meritocracy at all. In fact, it's completely the opposite of a meritocracy, because the people who are going to be the most dominant are not going to be the people who think about what is best for everyone, how they can try to ensure that they do the best for everyone, that they love everyone and support everyone, are kind and gentle and good to everyone, and they're also strong and determined, but they don't cross the personal boundaries of other people, and if ever they have to make a decision, they make it in council with others. I mean, that's my attitude. I don't believe in coercing other people, and I also don't believe in leading other people. I believe in letting other people's wisdom flourish, and their ability to judge and reason flourish, and that means letting them have a lot of personal autonomy. And you know, if people like me get picked away by all these piece of shit women for that, and who are the guys that are going to be selected for? Well, they're going to be the guys who want to get rich, who want to get popular and successful. Doesn't matter what they actually do for it. What matters is that they get the social status, they get the big prize, and as a consequence they get to sleep around with all sorts of piece of shit women. And there are these such people, you know, they're referred to as assholes, I guess, and I believe that we should find a term for the women who are attracted to them. Sluts would work, assholes, female assholes would also work. I've used the term ass-hearted, as in, you know, if you're attracted to an asshole, you have to have an ass heart to have this sort of attraction. But okay, these are the kinds of people that women would go for, and they would select for such people, and they would produce more of them. Guess what? These people are the ones who have the dark triad personality traits. That's psychopathy, narcissism, Machiavellianism. You can look these up, and you can look at what they mean. If you actually are curious about what they mean to individual people, you should look at my series of videos on child abuse, because, you know, my mother, her being hypergamous, she went for a guy who had social dominance, who could make things happen, who could control the situation, and who had a sense of authority, even intimidation. And she really liked him for the way, you know, he escorted back home, and how he how should I say this, had big plans to go to America, which of course never fulfilled because he lied to her. He played her very easily, and it's so easy to play women simply because they are so easily seduced by power and authority and all this garbage. And as a consequence of my mother marrying this man, I experienced about 2 decades of abuse in various forms. And I would say that because of the fact that I wasn't made aware of hypergamy, I lived through a very, very confusing childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood, in which women would stringently deny that hypergamy even existed. Those filthy pieces of shit. They lied to me just as they lied to every other decent man out there. They made excuses, they tossed in their denials. They blamed me for example, me having been, you know, in some senses cheated on. Not that I'd actually gone sexually with certain women, but in cheated on as in them flirting with other men, asking them to do various things with them. When I recount all of the things that I experienced because of people pursuing hypergamy while denying it, women pursuing hypergamy while denying it, it just makes my blood boil. I'm going to get to that part later, but what I want to say is that at the bottom of it, if women are attracted to dominant men, and they set up a dominance hierarchy in which women are, are excluded from it, as in if they set up a dominance hierarchy in which only men have to compete for dominance amongst each other, as opposed to just simply taking dominance of women just like that. What you end up with really is a sexual selection scheme in which you select for evil, which you select for the dark triad personality traits. And this has been in fact documented. Women tend to be attracted to people with dark triad personality traits. You can say anything you want about male sexuality. I personally don't really have strong sexual impulses. I mean, okay, I do have a very high libido, but at the same time, I'm not particularly attracted to, hot women with big boobs and what have you. I tend to just fall in love with women who I believe are decent and honorable and kind-hearted. And the only possible thing that could really turn me off is gross obesity, but even so, that's something you can fix with just a few months of exercise, unless you've got some disease that like type 1 diabetes, but even so you can still fix this sort of thing. But female sexuality, so whereas male sexuality is in a sense amoral, it's not based on morality, it doesn't make you go for a moral woman, and as a consequence your own sense of morality should motivate you to seek out a moral woman with whom to marry, whom to love, whom to have children with. Female sexuality is immoral, it is evil, because it pretty much makes a woman go for evil men and support evil men. And it's interesting, the term ovulation goggles has been used in a press release by researchers looking into this phenomenon, because apparently women tend to think that dominant men would actually make good fathers, and that jerks, cads, the kinds of people who are unreliable but who are dominant, they would make good fathers in their eyes, and they only think this way during the height of their estrous cycle. They only think this way when they're ovulating, when they're the most fertile. So they pretty much are geared to select for evil men, to select for men who destroy civilization and who cause suffering all around them. And you know what? That's wrong. That's evil. Women enable abuse this way. A woman enabled abuse in my case, for example. Women perpetuate abuse. They support abuses. It's wrong. And we should say it's wrong. We should say that hypergamy is evil. It's wrong. It's as simple as that. And we should not be making excuses for these women. We should not be tolerating these women. When these women start complaining about us and making excuses and trying to deflect the topic, we shouldn't tolerate that. We should recognize them for what they are, evil scumbags that need to be opposed, because honestly, even the uteruses, in a sense, are factories of evil so long as they bow to their own hypergamy. And it's noteworthy that, yes, solutions to hypergamy did exist in the past. We had traditional conservative societies where the woman was subject to the man was her sovereign, and he ruled over her. He decided how she would act. He could slap her if she went out of line, for example, if she went hysterical and started making all sorts of shit tests. So, this violence against women that was very light and very mild. If you actually were to beat your wife, you would get hanged or something to that effect. But the violence against women that was, how should I say this, just slapping by your spouse, that was in part there to please a woman's hypergamous instincts. And it was wrong as well, of course. It was completely dysfunctional. But there's the fact that, if you've got a dysfunctional woman, well, the whole of society, being having its traditionalist conservative shape, that was to a great extent because of a woman's dysfunction, and it was there in order to cater to and to, how should I say this, account for and cushion a woman's dysfunction. I mean, a society in which everyone did their fair share, in which everyone was autonomous and moral and stood up for virtue and did the best that they could possibly do and was free to pursue any career they wanted, in the name of good, in the name of fostering justice and compassion. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? It would be a utopia. But at the same time, women wouldn't like that. They would want to be dominated so that they would get their vagina tingles. And past societies, the way they were shaped that way, in a way that feminists call oppressive, because this was the way to please women. This was the way to account for women's moral deficit in their hypergamy and to, I guess, try to tone down its effects while making women happy and men as happy as they could be made. A whole society was shaped in accordance with and for the sake of female hypergamy. I don't think I'm making the point very well. I don't think I'm able to describe the whole enormity of it, but the issue is, for a man to find a woman attractive, all he would have to do is, all she would have to do is just lose weight. For a woman to find a man attractive, in general, for women to find men attractive, men have to either create a society in which women can comfortably feel attraction towards men, a whole society shaped on this instinct, or they could form dominance hierarchies in which they know that some men would lose out, in which essentially they would perpetuate the suffering of involuntary celibacy. It's insane. It's completely insane. I can't even express this properly. I will be making this article that I kept wanting to make, and I'm going to post it probably on A Voice for Men. I don't think in a video I can accurately describe how vastly insane this is. The fact that you have to structure the whole of human society for the sake of a wrong human instinct that's shared by almost half the population. So that's the way hypergamy influences things. If it's to the extent that it is grounded in a man's attitude, but if it's grounded in a woman's attitude, let's investigate that as well. If a woman can only be attracted to a man who is superior to her in terms of social status, prestige, etc., well, she's given a choice. She can either take on a subordinate role towards that man and be sexually attracted to him, or she can decide that the men who are her equals aren't good enough for her. And here's the problem, and this is the biggest problem with feminism that anyone can conceive of. I mean, it's at the heart of feminism itself. All these women who are attracted to men who are socially superior to them, they want to be socially equal to these men. They want to compete with these men, and actually that's wrong. Because if you come and tell me that you want me to treat you as your equal, what you're saying to me is that you want me to suffer involuntary celibacy, that you want me to go extinct, that you want me to be your harem eunuch, pretty much. You want me to be your eunuch and treat you as my equal? No, I'm not going to treat you as my equal if you want me to be your eunuch. You don't deserve. I'm going to treat you as a scumbag, because that's what you are. If you want men to be your equals but cannot handle equality, if you cannot handle marrying an equal, if you cannot handle loving an equal, I'm not going to treat you as my equal, because you're not my equal. You're a scumbag. So that's pretty much it in terms of, you know, equality, social equality. How the I'm sorry, how the hell can women, knowing their instincts, ever have the audacity to ask us to be their equals, when they know that this means they would shun us, that they would spit on us, that they would kick us and look down on us? How the hell? How can a woman have the... Once you are aware that every single woman out there wants you to treat her as her equal, unless she has a very strong sense of self-discipline, some very strong morals, and the ability to restrain, suppress, do away with her hypergamy, that unless she has these things, she just wants a false one-sided equality in which you are a eunuch. Well, wouldn't you want, if you were dealing with such a woman, wouldn't you want to, I know, come up to her and smack her in the face? Wouldn't you want to, I don't know, put her in prison or something? Okay, not smack her in the face, because that's violence, and we can't do that. Well, let me say that we can't talk about that on YouTube or anything like that. We can't encourage violence, because, you know, that's not completely correct. Even if it's violence against an evil person, an abuser, or an abuse enabler of various kinds, who is known an abuse enabler. I digress. Honestly, wouldn't you want to put her in prison? Wouldn't you want to prevent her from pursuing her hypergamy and having children with an evil man and perpetuating evil in the world? Wouldn't you want to do that? And the idea is that, you know, we walk amongst all these women who want us to treat them as equals one-sidedly, and who want to treat us as though they are our superiors because we treat them as equals. That's wrong. That's evil. The idea of treating someone as your inferior because they treat you as their equal is wrong. And, you know, what do I mean by their inferior? Think about it. If, as I might have said earlier in this video, if you can't get yourself to be attracted to a man because of the fact that the qualities he has are the same as the qualities you have, then you couldn't be, you know, you couldn't expect men to be attracted to you, because you would base your attraction on a certain set of qualities. I mean, objectively speaking, if you can't get yourself to be attracted to a man for who he is, and you are like him, then you shouldn't expect men to be attracted to you for who you are. But you are, because of the hypergamy, because you expect, you know, to be treated less stringently in terms of standards than a man. You expect that. So hypergamy is a built-in entitlement complex. A built-in entitlement complex. Now, there's a matter of honor that moral individuals have. It's the idea that once you have an expectation towards other people, you immediately also take on the expectation of doing the same thing for them, of wanting to provide the same thing for them. If you are hypergamous, then based on what I've just said, you have no honor. None. You don't have honor. You are perfectly happy to waive your honor in the pursuit of what is essentially an instinct that rises up within you almost every day of your life. Your sexuality will just, you know, come up to the surface all the time, and it will just knock away your sense of honor. But then there's also your sense of duty. that in a hypergamous woman is absent. And what do I mean by duty? Well, I mean two things. First of all, if people are suffering, if people are vulnerable, if people are hurt and need you to take care of them, then you might as well do that. You should do that. You should find it to be your duty, provided that what you're doing is helping them get back on their feet and become as independent as they can. But if there are certain things, for example, someone has lost their legs to minefield or what have you, then you need to accept that these people are going to need to be cared for the rest of their lives in various ways. And you should accept that, and you shouldn't expect them to, be more dominant in a sense than you already are. And likewise, if someone, say, loses their ability to speak in a country in which you don't have a high literacy rate, then you're going to have to accept that that guy is not going to be very socially influential. You wouldn't, decide to not marry someone because they were mute. Likewise, I can just go on, but essentially, if suppose that a country's social atmosphere, cultural atmosphere changes, and people who were once socially influential and dominant lose their dominance. Michelle Obama, I think, she mentioned how she thought it was going to be all over when it seemed as though Barack Obama would lose his first presidential election. I'm not actually sure which first election, but yeah, at the latest his first presidential election. She thought that she might end up, breaking up with him. That's hypergamy. If you were to break up with someone, if they had suffered an irrevocable loss in terms of their social status, if as soon as they fell down into a trough in terms of their, I guess, success in the social dominance sphere, if you were to dump them for that, what the hell kind of person does that make you? You're a slut. You're a worthless piece of shit in that case, and people should oppose you. They shouldn't be giving you any sort of support or benefits. They should go against you. It's simply wrong to throw someone away, to dump them when they have come upon hard times that they might not recover from because of social circumstances or what have you. That has nothing whatsoever to do with who they are. And if you love someone, you love them for who they are. You love them for their qualities, for their virtues. You don't love them for how other people think of them. You don't love them for how they influence other people. You don't. That's not love. Social influence is perishable. Success, economic success, social success, military success, or what have you, is perishable. Social status orders get overturned all the time, and a marriage vow is something you make and you keep for life. It doesn't just go away in hard times. The expression for richer and for poorer, in sickness and in health. That's there because some women, a lot of women, the vast majority of women are hypergamous, and it's there to remind them how bad their hypergamy really is. So that's one thing about duty. If you're hypergamous, you're gonna throw that away because suddenly the guy isn't good enough for you anymore. You're going to be attracted to that social radiance that the man emits, his dominance, his ability to be in control of a situation. And okay, that's not exploitative in the traditional sense of the term. If it's exploitative, then you try to take away from it, you try to diminish it and just deplete it. What a woman would do is try to cultivate it. She would try to prop the man up, but she wouldn't try to prop the man up for his own sake, because that's what he wanted. She would try to prop the man up so that he would start, glowing with this social dominance, and he would be a beacon for his social dominance, and she would just bask in this beacon of social dominance and soak it all in and feel really, really good and get the vagina tingles that she craves. And as soon as the batteries of that beacon went off, or as soon as something bad happened, say another man raped him, and he just became very depressed as a consequence of that, well, the beacon dies out, and so does the woman's love for him. She's not in love anymore. She's not happy anymore. If you've read if you've read traditional conservative blogs, especially Dialogue's blog, I absolutely love it. He talks about a woman being happy or unhappy, and by this he means sexually aroused by the man. Essentially, if she finds that he's not dominant enough for her, well then he has to go because he's not arousing her vagina tingles. And that's also wrong. That's also evil. And likewise, if a man is too caring, too loving, well, actually, I'm gonna go into that later in this video. That's probably one of the worst things about hypergamy that I could ever talk about. So anyway, there's also the matter in terms of duty of a woman's duty to state out and to live by her expectations of the man. And a hypergamous woman, she will have very fluid expectations of a man. Why? First of all, because they will be relative to how she is at a particular time. If we accept the female-centric version of hypergamy, she's going to be attracted to a man only as long as he gets more money than she does, or as long as he's more prestigious, socially dominant, or strong and in control of situations than she is. And if we look at the male-centric side of hypergamy, she's only going to be attracted to the man who is the most socially dominant. And there's a problem with that, because in order for a man to be socially dominant, he cannot be told what to do. And if a woman is hypergamous, she's only going to be attracted to men who aren't following her instructions in terms of what they have to do and who they have to be in order for her to be attracted to them. So let me repeat that, because that's a really important issue that I haven't seen covered in that talk or anywhere else really. A hypergamous woman, in order to be attracted to a man, cannot actually spell out her hypergamy and expect him to adhere to it. Why? Because if he adheres to it, he's not being dominant. He's following her. She's not following him. He's not, taking charge of things. He's looking at a list of things that he has to be and that he has to do, and he's following that. And it's interesting, all these stories of men who listen to their wives, who are very faithful and kind and supportive, and try to understand why exactly their wives didn't like them, why they weren't attracted to them. They listened to their wives, and they were dumped by them pretty much. It's interesting. They were dumped by their wives, even though they tried to do everything in their power to win their love. That's because they were trying to do everything in their power to win their love. Because they were trying to understand, because they were trying to be sympathetic, because they wanted to have a very clear set of things that their wives wanted, and they wanted to stick to it. Am I getting the point across that this is just wrong for a wife to expect dominance from a man instead of being honest and clear about what she wants? There are several problems with, expecting a man to take charge of her and to please her in a way that she doesn't spell out, because he doesn't have to be out to please her. He has to be out to, take care of her as a subordinate rather than please her as an equal, or, as a superior. A few men actually do that, which I think is wrong. But besides that, Essentially, a woman who doesn't expose her requirements to the man, doesn't expose them to his judgment, to his scrutiny. One thing that I would really have loved throughout all my, I guess, interactions with women was to actually get a sense of what they wanted, because then I could judge that, see whether or not it is moral or immoral. And if it was immoral, I wouldn't go for it. I wouldn't try to approach them and be attracted to them. But I think that women, honestly, they unconsciously or consciously, deliberately avoid spelling out the requirements because they want a dominant man who won't follow their requests, but who will instead take charge of them, instinctively or what have you. You can't work with that, and you can't respect that, and that's not respectful towards you. And a man shouldn't have to put up with that. He shouldn't have to put up with basically being subject to a woman's whims. He should have to receive, well, he is in his own right to expect that the woman spell out her expectations of the man and is willing to adhere to them, meaning that if this man adheres to her expectations, she actually stays with him and loves him. It's as simple as that. This is what I would do towards a woman. I would talk very clearly about what I expected from her, and I would expect her to talk about what she would expect from me. Some men might be different, but objectively speaking, it's just wrong for you not to spell out your expectations, to do essentially your duty towards the man, of being honest and straightforward about what you want. And I'm getting to the part that really hurts me the most personally, because this is how I've been affected by hypergamy. And looking back at all these bitches, well, let's just say that if if you've seen the Mass Effect series, if you've played it, well, for some of these women, once you call them out on their hypergamy, they become really irascible, and they try to accuse you of things, or they try to avoid you entirely. But the ones who go berserk when you call them out on their hypergamy, even if you do so nicely and try to get them to see how wrong it is and try to get them to change, well, in terms of their attitude, I've just had plenty of their disingenuous behavior. I've had far too much of it, and I don't think I or anyone else should put up with it. The worst part of it is that women who are hypergamous, that's the vast majority of women, will look down on you for being kind and caring and loving and supportive, and for my variety of sexuality, I suppose. It has a lot to do with being kind and caring and loving and having strong intimate bonds. Generally, I cannot fathom the idea of being sexually attracted to a woman without truly loving her and without wanting to hold her and care about her very deeply and essentially just devote myself to her. And that's a very gentle thing. It's very caring, and it's also something that I'm sure a lot of women will see as wimpy. It's a matter of true love, of devoting yourself fully to someone, of trying to understand all of their needs and desires and catering to them. Well, catering to the ones obviously that are just and good, and trying to discourage her from those that are not evil, but that are not just and good and that are excessive. Greed for material objects, for example, doesn't necessarily have to be evil. Well, it is if taken to the extreme, but it's not something that you want to encourage either. So I would also expect the same thing from women, as in for them to be gentle towards me, caring and affectionate and loving. And for me, the idea of hugging a woman, of holding her, stroking her, caressing her, is just a wonderful thing. And in a sense, it's a precursor to actual sexual intercourse. I couldn't conceive of just having raw sex like they do in porn with a woman. It's just, and likewise of having a tender romantic involvement with a woman who might in love, who wasn't, I guess, worth loving from a moral perspective. So because of that, I've taken a completely different approach, I guess, to attraction than the alpha. I have to put that in quotes because the term alpha is complete bullshit. Gorillas are not superior to humans, and humans are superior to gorillas partly because we're more compassionate, we're more gentle, and more able to cooperate and to stand up for justice as opposed to standing up for our alphaness. It is just a bullshit. Sorry for using that term. It's also just a bullshit term invented by the PUA community in order to try to make themselves look better, and that's what narcissists do. They try to make themselves seem superior to others. They're just absurd.